Ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished guests, my name is Małgorzata Dziembała. I am the head of department of the University of Economics in Katowice, Poland. Also, I'm the associate professor. It's a great pleasure to have you in today's webinar entitled Poland as an example of the effective utilization of the EU cohesion policy funds. This webinar is one of the activities implemented and supported by the scientific grant Balkan Ambitious and Polish Inspirations, which is the public task financed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland within the grant competition Public Diplomacy 2022. The grant contractor is the Center for Europe, Warsaw University. And there are also Polish and foreign institutional partners of the project. The main institutional partners from abroad are Faculty of Law St. Clements Ordinsky University Bitola, University of Cyril and Methodius Skopje, University of Montenegro, University of Niš, Serbia, Institute for Research and European Studies, North Macedonia, and there are also Polish institutional partners, Center for International Relations, Warsaw School of Economics, Poland, University of Economics in Katowice, Poland, University of Gdańsk, Cardinal Wyszyński University in Warsaw, Catholic University of Lublin, University of Opole, the Institute of Central Europe in Lublin, also Polish European Community Studies Association, PECSA. And today we are going to focus on the Polish experience in the utilization of the EU funds, the impact on the Polish economy, and the absorption of the funds. There are several questions which could be raised about cohesion policy and its contribution to the development, growth, and changes in the economy of our country and its regions. We would be interested to know whether these funds have been used efficiently for the benefits of different communities. I do hope they will find some conclusive answers. And now, let me introduce our distinguished experts in the alphabetical order. And Dr. Marcin Baron is a faculty, University of Economics in Katowice, Poland, Department of Strategic and Regional Studies. As an academic for around 20 years, Marcin has participated in numerous mobility actions and international research projects with universities, policymakers, and liaison institutions in innovation and regional policy, especially related to technological game changers, industrial application, and open innovations are his focus of interest. He deals with the application of strategic management tools in policy programming. He has vast experience concerning EU cohesion policy and European funding. And he has got a sound track record of advisory to public institutions. And he co-created strategies and programs for the economic development of large Polish cities and regions. He was also head consultant of the integrated territorial investments strategy of the central subregion of Silesia. He's a consultant for the regional urban policy of Silesia and also is a member of numerous associations like International Society for Professional Innovation Management, Regional Studies Association, and he's also the member of the task force of the National Special Development Committee of the Polish Academy of Sciences for the integrated development policy of Poland and Europe. And currently, he's starting a research project on marginalized communities in the process of decarbonization and socio-economic just transition towards the green economy within the Horizon program. And our next expert is Dr. Anna Masuń-Oracz. She is an advisor on strategic management and international expansion of companies, playing potentially of director of the Warsaw School of Economics for Africa, assistant professor at the Warsaw School of Economics. Also, she is author of lectures and training courses in strategic management, which she conducts on different continents, namely Europe, Africa, and Asia. She specializes in the economic policy and development economics of emerging countries, and her research interests include innovation and startup ecosystem, and she has numerous study trips to China and to numerous African countries as well. And also, I would like to add that she's the manager, or she has a vast experience in managing some projects. She's the manager, main contractor, and coordinator of the project Jean Monnet module on the European Union and the contemporary sub-Saharan Africa, an interdisciplinary approach, smart specialization EU, Africa. For many years, she has been associated with the EU and found market, and as I mentioned, she has implemented several projects. And she was also the vice president of the management board of a PKN Orlen Group company, Płocki Park Przemysłowo-Technologiczny, and a member of the supervisory board of the PKN Orlen Group Educational Center. And she's also the vice president of the board of the Polish European Community Studies Association. And what about about experience? She has also vast experience in delivering some speeches, attending conferences, more than 100 speeches and lectures at both Polish and international conferences, as well as publications in recognized journals and book chapters. And our first speaker, Dr. Jarosław Nazarczuk. And Dr. Jarosław Nazarczuk is the assistant professor at the Faculty of Economic Sciences of the University of Warmia and Mazury in Olsztyn, Poland. He has chaired and participated in research projects carried out for the National Science Center, local government units, government organizations, and other public authorities. And what about and this studies focus on operation of special economic zones, regional export activity, and also the role of institution in firms' location decision, economic development of selected regions, evaluation of regional operation program, high-tech clusters, regional marketing. They were also financed, some of them were financed from National Science Center or carried for regional marshal offices and other public entities. And he's author and co-author of numerous publications on, in the field of his interest. And also these publications includes 3 books, 5 articles in impact factor journals, and about more than 30 articles in other international and national journals. And also he's also an active member of the European Regional Studies Association. So, welcome our distinguished experts. And what about today's discussion? And so the aim of the project is to present Poland as the leader of the political, social, and cultural changes in the region of Central and Eastern Europe. And today we focus on the cohesion policy and cohesion policy and its contribution to the economic development of our country and its regions. Because let me give you a brief introduction. So in 2004, Poland and 9 other countries joined the European Union. This enlargement was spectacular, not only due to the economic potential of these economies, but also considering the scale and the intensity of socio-economic challenges, including those at the regional level they brought into the European Union. These countries display a low or just diversified level of socio-economic development. Therefore, the financial resources transferred to Poland and under the cohesion policy were to contribute to reducing the existing disparities, to make up for distance, and also to boost development and convergence relative to more developed EU countries and regions. Poland has become one of the main beneficiaries of the cohesion policy, also because of the changes that took place in our country. And starting from 2004, but also earlier, the scale of financial transfers has been significant. Due to a relatively long period of utilization of this financial assistance, it is possible to indicate the effects of current EU financial support. And I think that our distinguished experts could answer many questions, and also we could find the answers to many questions that will appear. And today we have three sessions. Let's start the first round of questions, and this first round will focus on the effects of the EU funds on the economy of Poland and its regions. And let's start with the first question to Jarosław Nasarczuk. Yes, what is the impact, in fact, of the cohesion policy on the Polish economy?
We must start that relatively high economic growth recorded in Poland from 2004 to 2020, which actually amounted for 3.7% annually on average, was largely due to the use of EU funds and access to the EU single market. During these years, actually only Ireland among the EU countries achieved a higher cumulative economic growth rate. The results we have now of simulation studies using the EU impact model, which were carried out by IMAP Consulting and IBS, and together with another study by the Ministry of Funds and Regional Policy in Poland, indicate that the inflow of EU funds has enabled the acceleration of GDP growth and the process of convergence of the Polish economy with other EU countries. It is estimated that between 2004 and 2020, around 8.4% of the average annual economic growth rate, or an additional 0.3 to 0.5 percentage points to annual growth rate, can be the result of projects co-financed by the EU funds. Within the same years, Poland's mere participation in the single European market led to the acceleration of Poland's GDP growth rate between 1.6 up to 2.1 percentage points on average per year. Investments financed by EU funds are also a factor in changes to the sectoral structure of the economy, expressed in increasing the share of industry and construction in gross value added, with a decrease in the share of agriculture. The positive impact of EU funds on the national economy also has a non-financial dimension. It materializes mainly through an improvement in the effectiveness of processes related to the participation or implementation of investment projects. Funds that are inflowing to the Polish economy under the cohesion policy contribute to the intensification of processes of real economic convergence between Poland and the EU as a result of a more dynamic economic growth related to the growth of physical and human capital, technological progress, which in turn influences the growth of labor productivity. From 2004 to 2020, the distance between Poland and the EU 27, measured by the GDP per capita, decreased by 24.2 percentage points, out of which 3.8 was due to the implementation of the cohesion policy. The ratio of Polish GDP per capita to the EU 27 average increased from 50.1% in 2004 up to 75.7% in 2020. As a result, the country has significantly reduced the development gap with Western European countries and even surpassed some of them, such as Greece and Portugal. EU funds have also triggered a noticeable increase in employment and a decrease in unemployment. The positive effect of the European cohesion policy can be seen in the creation of new jobs, the improvement of workers' skills, and their better adaptation to changing labor market conditions. For example, almost 13% of the increase in the employment rate between 2004 and 2020 was the result of investments co-financed by EU funds. So without EU funds, the employment rate would have been at least lower by 2.1 percentage points. In this period, so years 2004-2020, the growth rate of the number of employed was one of the highest in the EU. During these years, an extra 2.7 million were employed in Poland. In 2020, the number of employed people was higher by about 464,000, thanks to the implementation of investments co-financed by the EU budget. The positive impact of EU funds on the labor market can also be seen in the decrease in the unemployment rate. It should be remembered that when Poland joined the EU in 2004, it had the highest unemployment rate in the EU. Basically, it amounted for 19%. In the following years, there was a rapid decline in unemployment rate to the level of 3.2% in 2020, which was more than twice as low as the EU 27 average. Cohesion policy has also contributed to a reduction in income inequality as measured by the Gini coefficient, and between 2004 and 2020, Poland saw a decrease in the value of this indicator from 32.2 to 27.2. So by 2020, the impact of the cohesion policy on the Gini coefficient amounted to about 2.5 percentage points. Based on these few examples, the impact of the cohesion policy on Poland's socio-economic development to date has been explicitly positive and has manifested itself in many areas. European Fund had a significant impact on economic growth, investment activity, the labor market, and income inequality reduction.
And now would like to know the opinion of Anna Masoń-Oracz about the impact of cohesion policy on a specific fields, namely on enterprises and innovativeness of Poland. Could you share your opinion with us?
Thank you, Professor Dziembała, for giving me the floor. First of all, I would like to thank for having me here today. As for all my professional life, I've been dealing with cohesion policy on the ground, helping the SMEs and large companies and also other entities to use those money for development and for reaching the next level of competitiveness and also boosting the innovativeness. Since like 2004, so that's more than 27 years of dealing with cohesion policy on the ground. So in my opinion, without the cohesion policy, we wouldn't be at that place where we are right now. And most of the company will not benefit from what they get, those opportunities. In terms of industrialization, innovativeness, or human capital and infrastructure itself, I would say that especially investment in human capital, especially in the first period of using the money from cohesion policy 2004-2006, there was enormous large of different projects, especially from European social funds that was dedicated to increase the competitiveness of human capital in the enterprises. At that time, Polish enterprises actually didn't spend a lot on trainings or like postgraduate studies. It thanks to European social funds that they could do it, and there was enormous huge of such kind of project. As for now, of course, as the Poland and the Polish enterprises really increased their competitiveness, and they could really stand, at the same, I would say, row with our German, French, or Spanish competitors. Now we are really dealing with the how to increase or maybe how to use the most of our innovativeness, but also using and following the priorities that EU presented, like Smart Europe, Sustainable Europe, and Inclusive Europe. Especially last month and last year, because of the COVID, what I observe is like enormous help from Cohesion Fund to help Polish enterprises to survive. It was a lot of subsidies and grants to fight that crisis. But even right now, in terms of Russian invasion to the Ukraine and what we are facing right now, I hope that cohesion policy somehow through our government will help us to overcome that crisis. In my opinion, that as Dr. Jarosław said that, and you also mentioned that is quite a modern and flexible tool for the development of all regions of the European Union, contributes to this to a more balanced development of the regions. And saying that this fulfillment of shared priorities that EU introduced in this budget period is also an important tool to respond to immediate needs as we all facing right now with this migration crisis, refugee crisis. But what I really think is that the core business of cohesion policy is like really built up from as a one integrated market and as a long-term investment policy for transformation, resilience, and capacity building for every region. Right now is in this global world, which is totally changing and shifting. We as a one international organization, which European Union is, we should really build up our strong competitiveness in through our governance model and through dynamics of cohesion policy. We can really do it. Like example of like building the one European universities that can be competitor to American one or Chinese one. I think that this is definitely something that the impact of the cohesion policy of the enterprises and innovativeness, it's huge. And like I said at the beginning, without it, we wouldn't be, you know, at that point that we are right now. And especially the impact of cohesion policy lasts for a long time after the termination of the programs, and it's probably extends to other regions and countries of the EU, apart from those where the programs were implemented. So it assumes that 15 years after the termination of the implementation period, the €1 spent within this tool for the periods that we are right now, 2014, 2020, makes €1.7 of additional GDP on EU level. So the number shows that without that tool, we wouldn't be at the same level. So now actually it's a challenge for all of us how to use, and EU and its funds can help with resolving the current crisis, especially the energy crisis, which also, you know, impact the SMEs and the development. So that's for a start, and I wouldn't take more time, as probably Dr. Baron also would like to add something to that, and I will finish at that point. Thank you.
So thank you, and of course we should. The microeconomic, the sector impact were discussed. And what about the regional level? What is the impact of the cohesion policy on the Polish regions? And I think that the experience of the Silesian Voivodeship could be presented by Marcin Baron.
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor, and also it is a bit of difficult to speak after the distinguished experts, but maybe I will be able to add something to that or build on that really. Actually, the question is how it affects the regions. It affects the regions in the same way as it affects the country, as it affects the businesses, because that's in general overall economy. But first of all, I would mention some macroeconomic effects, and then maybe go into a little bit of soft issues. So I would first of all point out the investment potential, really, because that is, in case of regions, especially in case of public administration in the regions, that is the thing that is really the most important, probably. Why? Because as for Poland, the regional and local governments, they are for sure not poor, but still there are plenty of needs that need to be satisfied. And these needs very often are related to the well-being of the inhabitants and well-being of the citizens. So for me, my personal perspective is like that plenty of things would never happen in Poland and in Polish regions, in Polish cities, also in my region of Silesia, without the European money, because local and regional government, they tend to fund issues, fund things that are given them for governance, for management, and they will just do the very good basic standard. But if you would like to go beyond, if you want to go further, to invest in some initiatives that are really maybe not groundbreaking, but really innovative, they will never happen without the EU money. So in general, that's the first aspect. That's just really strongly adding value. And that's the most important thing for me. More general in terms of macroeconomics, it of course refers to investments in general. The level of investments in the country, in the Polish regions, would not be the same without the EU money. And we can see it nowadays when we see this little gap between the financial perspectives of the previous one and the new one that we hope to start maybe soon, but let's see what happens. Anna also refers to different complex issues in the European Union related to the war, to COVID, to different political circumstances that unfortunately make the process a little bit longer than we probably all expected. Just to show a little bit on the numbers of figures, I would like to refer to my two slides. And on the first slide, you would see the GDP of the regions, and I selected some regions. The red line, the thick red line, is my region, that is Silesia. I was asked to talk a little bit about, and the other regions are either our competitors in Poland, so I decided to choose the regions of Wielkopolskie or Dolnośląskie or Pomorskie, which are kind of similar to our region. They are not so much coal-based, or they are even not really coal-based, but heavy industrialized and with some nice prospects for the future. I have also added some old industrial regions that we usually compare to in Silesia. That is the North Rhine-Westphalian in Germany and Nord-Pas-de-Calais in France. And I also added another region, that is the Dutch region of North Brabant, which is called the brain port of the Netherlands, because I love this example as a case of innovative economy and economy that was also transformed with the industrial heritage of the region. And of course, you will easily see on the left panel of the slide that GDP maybe somehow can be compared, apart from North Rhine-Westphalia, which is much stronger in GDP. But the most interesting thing is about the right panel, when I show the dynamics of the GDP growth. And you will easily see on the picture that the old regions of the European Union are somewhere down the spaghetti part, and the new regions are up there, with Silesia somewhere in the middle, and some other regions up to this line. I forgot also to mention that I also added the coal region of Bulgaria. That is Yugoslav, and you please remember that is also the tourism region of Bulgaria. So we have two kinds of growth there. And you will easily see on this slide that really the regions of the new coming member states are catching up. So this convergence is happening. But unfortunately, what I would also like to mention while going into Silesia, as what we can see on the next slide, that is the GDP per inhabitant, because when we compare the GDP per inhabitant, then the picture is maybe even nicer, but gives a little bit of more of reflection, because you will see on this picture that those regions who are really knowledge intensive are growing faster. You will see on the left panel the yellow line related to Brabant, the brain port of the Netherlands. And unfortunately, on the right panel, you will see that Silesia, which is still heavily industrialized, related on some basic industries, it's losing the momentum compared to Dolnośląskie or Wielkopolskie, who seem to be a little bit more innovative, a little bit less path dependent. So that's the story, that is not only about the European Union, but about how in general we shape our macroeconomic policy. And let's stop with the GDP and investments here, and also just a few sentences about the soft issues, as I mentioned before. I would also like to mention that for me, European Union and its funding really provided a big value of building dialogue and partnership, especially between the local governments, because they started really to talk about the joint programming, especially the instrument of integrated territorial investments that we had in the last perspective, and we are going to have it in the future, was really the forum where mayors started to talk and discuss what do we really need, how to make the better use of the best use of the money we receive from the European Union. So this partnership and dialoguing thing is very much important for me, but still I would like, at least in my region, I would like to have much more discussion on larger integrated projects, really to provide a kind of demonstrators or pilots that we could be famous for across the world, really. And really it needs a huge money, and it needs a great deal of consensus and a kind of bravery from the local government. But with quite a good start we had in the previous years, I believe that's going to happen one day in the future. Thanks a lot.
So thank you very much, and thank you very much for the contribution during the first round of questions. We got an overall picture of the impact of the EU funds on our economy, of course, on the impact on the regional level. And now we turn our attention to the absorptive capacity. And so to the absorptive capacity and to the second round of questions. So to start with the question, what is the absorptive capacity of EU funds? How it could be perceived? And maybe Jarosław Nazarczuk could share your opinion with us.
Thank you for passing the floor to me. Transfers from the EU budget come to Poland mainly due to the implementation of two common EU policies. So the cohesion policy, so a policy to reduce disparities in the economic development of EU regions and countries, and the common agricultural policy. The cohesion policy, together with the structural component of the common agricultural policy, which is to support the development and modernization of rural areas, accounted for the vast majority of incoming transfers to Poland. In the entire period of membership, it has so far amounted to 156 billion euros. So it's about 77% of the total transfers, while support for the agricultural incomes under the CAP accounted for about 43 billion euros, about 21% of total transfers. It should be noted that the sum of the transfers received by Poland over the whole period was more than 3 times the sums of the contributions paid, which actually totaled for about 66 billion euros. So there was a net gain of more than 138 billion euros in transfers. The largest part of the inflow of EU transfers to Poland was in the form of structural funds for the implementation of the cohesion policy. The net inflow of funds from the EU budget after deducting Poland's membership fee average of 8 billion euros annually in the years of the membership. So it was equivalent to about 2.1% of Poland's GDP. In the years 2004 to 2020, the largest EU support was directed at projects in the fields of basic infrastructure development, like transport infrastructure, energy, environmental protection, social infrastructure. The remaining funds were to direct support for the productive sector and, to a slightly less extent, for the development of human resources. These funds are valuable development aid, allowing for radical improvement in the institutional environment of the Polish economy, the development of infrastructure, support of the modernization processes of enterprises, and the strengthening of human capital. Thanks to them, Poland can take a greater advantage of the opportunities created by its participation in the single European market. However, it is worth noting that the inflow of structural funds is characterized by strong ripple effects over time linked to the implementation of the EU budget perspectives, maintaining for most of the years of the membership and until now the position of Poland as the largest beneficiary of EU transfers means that the scale of the net transfers nominally has not been reduced so far. Poland's economic development, however, means that the scale of these transfers in relation to GDP is gradually decreasing. This is a natural phenomenon which also signals that in the future, once Poland reaches a sufficient high level of GDP per capita, in relation to the EU average, the country may change from a beneficiary to the net contributor, but this is hardly a near-term reality. So the structural funds are helping to modernize the Polish economy, to remove bottlenecks, hampering development, and are helping to improve the quality of life of the Polish population. They contribute to improving development opportunities in the long term, while generating a short-term demand effect that improves economic prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you for this, for the Poland's perspective, and maybe we can touch more practical issue, which more recommendations for our Balkan partners, how to increase the absorptive capacity in terms of European funds, basing on the Polish example. So I would like to answer these questions, Martin and Anna. Could you share your opinion? How to increase the competitiveness? What is the main factor? How to use the funds efficiently and effectively as well?
Okay, so I was mentioned the first, so probably I'm expected to take the floor. Okay.
Yes, please.
Yep. That's really an interesting story about always sharing this best practices and talking how to do that. Actually, I wonder whether there is really a need to talk about bringing this absorptive capacity, because if you go to Cohesion data portal, which is a very good source of knowledge, by the way, and I really encourage you to use it in your, let's say, daily routines related to Cohesion. You will easily find that in general, most of the countries that they would like to address here, like Central and Eastern Europe and Balkans, and also compared to the Western Europe, so to the old member states, let's say, in terms of spending 2014, 2020, it goes more or less similar. Of course, you will have tiny differences, but most of the countries in the major funds, they usually have the allocation planned, so is the call for proposals were organized, or the flagship projects were already granted, and the spending is usually in between 60-something% till 80%. So I would say that maybe if we look only on the numbers, we could say everybody is doing quite fine. So maybe there is nothing really special about Poland to be shared, and no extra lessons to be taken by Poland. But I would like to mention one thing, that actually, I think that our country can be really a good example of planning. we are doing really very well with the administrative procedures related to European funding. And it's quite a long story, and it is not really politically biased. I mean, the whole system is existing from the years when we started the European Union money. We went smoothly from the pre-accession funds to cohesion funding. And I believe that everybody understands the system. Of course, I do mean the professionals who are in that. The ministry cooperates with the regions. The regions have their certain role, having the regional operational plans. So in general, all levels are really deeply involved in planning, starting from the state government through the regions, ending at the local governments. And it is quite clear and transparent. Of course, you have always some question marks, you have always some delays, and you can always point some institutions or people that are maybe not doing that way we would expect them to do. But in general, we have a system that is working, that is understandable, that is, as I said, for me, it is transparent. So that's a really long-lasting consensus of partnership between different stakeholders. And really, if the Balkan colleagues would like to learn some lessons from us, I really encourage you to visit different institutions in Poland and talk about this, because I believe really as Poland, we can be a good practice, really independent of political orientation of the one or the other government that we have or used to have. But also I would maybe like to touch another issue that is for me quite important. And also, again, I will refer to the 8th cohesion report launched a few months ago by the European Commission, of course, and address the chapter number 7, which is labeled better governance, because we can have the procedures, we can spend in, let's say, the same pace, but we also need to have this understanding of what a good governance is. And there are 5 dimensions of good governance concerning the cohesion, and namely they are, let me read, the voice and accountability, the government effectiveness, the regulatory quality, the rule of law, and the control of corruption. And unfortunately, Poland and some other younger European members are in most of the cases very much below the European average. So really, when we are talking about the sound governance, we still need to think not only about the procedures, but also about the fundamentals of democracy. And it is so much needed right now when we have war on our boundaries, when we have really a big deal of populism also in the Western countries. If we really want to keep the EU a very good instrument promoting European cooperation and promoting peace across the continent, we really need to go back to democracy. We really need to go back to the basic rights of the society, because let's be clear, in our part of Europe, we are still lagging behind on that.
So thank you. Anna, what is your opinion, how to increase the absorptive capacity? Because you have vast experience in EU funds. What is your opinion on that? What recommendations could you put?
Thank you, Małgorzata. After what Dr. Baran already said, I can only add from the practical experience of the more than 500 applicants that I've already went through my hands. As was mentioned, we were good at planning, but within the good governments, I would say that in order to conclude on the lesson learned for our partners in that project about the absorptive capacity of Poland in terms of European funds, out there that more informed and coordinated project selections, and thereby a better allocation and better use of the programming funds. In Poland, what I found out, and also in my research, that most of the companies just didn't understand at the time, like especially at the beginning of the implementing cohesion funds here in Poland in the first two-period budget, 2004 and 2007, 2013. They didn't understand the issue, how it's structured. And so clearer and more integrated information of potential applicants about funding opportunities should be enhanced, like, and a wider network of potential collaboration partners. Of course, we had that information, what is possible for funding, but most of the companies, they didn't know. And it's not actually, I would say, they want to understand, as we are the expert at, European Union, we know all about, the treaties, how it works, and so far, so on. But the companies, they just do not know how. So the better promotion of results, more targeted on a more aggregated level and to a wider audience. It was like during all the different conferences we had that experience that I haven't seen many companies representatives on when we were talking about, cohesion policy, structural funds, how we use it. Even when I was like one of the members of the regional committee of the preparing Poland for the period 2014-2020 in terms of smart specialization. The idea was to integrate like the triple helix, like we as academics, the representative of the people from the voivodeship and the SMEs, all large companies. And during our meetings, we haven't seen much of the representatives of the companies, because they truly didn't understand, for example, what the smart specialization is. And if they would not attend the meetings, as Dr. Brown said, this good planning would not be possible, because we didn't have the voice from the companies while programming the period 2014-2020 in terms of smart specialization. And the key areas of how we can actually help the companies to boost not only the competitiveness, but also the innovativeness and so on. So what I would really, about the absorptive capacity, what I would really recommend, that is more efficient program management by pooling resources and achieving a wider impact at the same time. Of course, it's like I'm of the opinion that having the companies during such meetings, as I mentioned, it's not, in many countries, it's not so easy task, as the role of the companies, like to make the business and to do the trade. But still, if the more promotion could be done, at the moment that, hey guys, it's really important that we have to have you at this programming level. I think that cohesion policy funds could be allocated in a more efficient way than is right now. Later, I will add some slides on that, so our viewers also can see it. And yeah, so more informed, coordinated actions for our partners, and yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting recommendations, how to increase for our Balkan partners, how to increase the absorptive capacity. Very interesting one. However, we must move to the third session, and during this first session, this first round of questions, we are not focusing on the impact on absorptive capacity, but I would like to get your opinion about the prospects of the cohesion policy in Poland, very short one. First of all, I would like to ask Anna, because you are just talking and about competitiveness. So what about the competitiveness? How to increase the competitiveness of Poland in terms of new priorities of the European Commission, of course, with the use of the European Union funds? What is your opinion about that? Very short comments.
Thank you. Very, very briefly, as usual, we are running out of time, and I will also would like to give a floor to my distinguished colleagues on that. So very, very briefly, what is, I'm really, I'm a researcher, but with the practical background. So what I would say that through different projects within the new priorities of the European Union, we should really concentrate on strategic challenges of the Union's futures, focus on smart, low carbon and inclusive growth, simpler, more focus on modernized policy, easier and faster to deliver and greater flexibility to adapt to changing needs, closer link with European semester, policy reforms and country-specific recommendations, available for all regions in the EU, concentrated where most needed. As of course we seen that this convergence of the regions is higher and higher, but still we have to put more attention of the better possibilities for transactional actions and social innovation. As what is very important, that more connected Europe and more social Europe access to employment, women's labor market participation, equal access and quality, effectiveness of the labor market, relevance of education and training. That's, for me, personally, the most important thing that we have to really strengthening this action, and also a Europe closer to the citizens, strengthening capacities and coordination functions for local authorities and partners through integrated territorial investment and community-led local initiatives. And last but not least, I would say that single audit principles and proportionality for low-risk programs, partnership, and relevant stakeholders remains central and should remain to the central to the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And during the discussion, we mentioned about the transformation. So what is the prospects and in fact the role of the cohesion in the transformation of regions just in Poland? And I would like Marcin to share your view on this topic.
Okay, thank you. Just to keep it really short, first of all, I believe that we really are able to move the cohesion thing forward for the whole Europe. So it's going to work, even though we are a little bit lagging right now. And right now, I just point directly to the just transition because this refers to Silesia. Personally, before COVID and before the Russian attack on Ukraine, I was on the opinion that the transition of economy for Silesia, I mean, getting to less carbon or zero carbon economy was not really such a big issue because we have a huge absorptive capacity in other industries, so we could easily take over the people from the coal mines to the other sectors, and especially though plenty of coal miners would also in the meantime go to the pensions. So of course the circumstances a little bit changed. But still, what is the case for just transition in Poland is the Polish energy mix. So actually, of course, it is a local or regional problem in Silesia that we need to deal with closures of coal mines and electricity production and steelworks, that's obvious. But we could cope with it. But still, the problem is the Polish energy mix. Poland is very strongly reliant upon the coal-based energy and coal-based production. So actually the just transition is not a Silesian problem. It is really the huge Polish problem. And we really need to have consensus on how to use cohesion money, how to implement Green Deal policies, because it is the only way to keep us competitive for the future.
So thank you. And the last question, because we mentioned during the discussion about the pandemic in Poland, and it was there were many actions taken which were supported with the EU funds to overcome the effects of pandemic in Poland. And what is your that's why I would like to ask question: what is the role of EU cohesion policy in overcoming the effects of pandemic in Poland? And I think the Dr. Nazarczuk will share your opinion with us.
So I should start with one statement that the cohesion policy certainly has the potential to mitigate crisis or some kind of an unexpected situations, and the use of its instruments during, for example, the migration crisis in Europe between 2014 and 15, or the earthquake in central Italy, like it was in 2009 or 16, is a clear evidence of this. And these examples show that it can respond quickly to emergencies. However, it should be borne in mind that its overriding task is to achieve in the long term an improvement in the EU's economic, social, and territorial cohesion. The EU funds transferred to Poland play an important role in stabilizing economic processes, especially in times of economic downturn. This applies both to the cyclical decline in the level of economic activity and to the slowdown resulting from external shocks of random nature, which are difficult to predict. The latter scenario materialized in 2020 with the outbreak of the global COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in actually highly reduced economic activity worldwide through its impact on reduced population mobility. The economic stabilization role played by EU funds is derived from the very mechanism of fund allocation, which is independent of the economic climate and market sentiment, which in turn determines the direction of capital transfers in the form of, let's say, portfolio or foreign direct investment. Thus, EU funds act as a kind of a financial safety cushion during and immediately after a downturn. On the other hand, they may also generate certain risk during the period of high economic growth through additional above potential stimulation of activity. Poland so far has made extensive investments to address the negative impact of the crisis. Poland has invested almost 860 million euros to support the health sector, obviously part of which was used for the purchase of ventilators or emergency vehicles. Some 1.1 billion euros was dedicated for the support for small and medium entities in grants or other financial instruments. Almost 930 million euros have been used so far to mitigate the negative social impacts on people, and another 162 million euros under the operational program Digital Poland have been used to finance equipment for distance learning, provide loans for preferential broadband infrastructure. From the perspective of available econometric simulations developed by the Ministry of Funds and Regional Policy in Poland, cohesion policy was a factor in mitigating the negative impacts of the pandemic. Taking into account the two available scenarios, so firstly the scenario with, and secondly without the pandemic, the relative impact of EU funds on the nominal value of Poland's GDP between 2020 and 2023 is clearly higher in the scenario with the pandemic. So the scale of its impact is estimated to range from 0.1% of the GDP in 2020 up to even 0.3% in 2022 and 2023. So This means that the contribution of cohesion policy to the level of Polish economic activity is higher in the scenario with the slowdown than in the scenario without any shock. A positive impact was also observed in terms of the effect of cohesion policy on the employment rate in Poland, aged 20 to 64, between 2020 and 2023, which was in the baseline scenario higher by 0.02 up to 0.12 percentage points relative to the non-shock scenario. This means that although the overall level of employment rate decreased as a result of the pandemic, compared to its path in the scenario without access to the cohesion policy funds, the scale of decrease is lower. Similar effects can be observed in simulations of the impact of the cohesion policy on the labor market concerning the unemployment rate of people aged 15 and above. EU measures in the scenario with the pandemic reduced the unemployment rate to a greater extent that would have been the case in the scenario without the pandemic. The magnitude of this impact is estimated to range up to 0.16 percentage points. To sum up, these few examples clearly show that thanks to the cohesion policy funds and instruments implemented, the extent of the negative impact of the COVID-19 outbreak was lesser. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting discussion. Unfortunately, the time is over. Today, we touch different and very interrelated issues because we mentioned, first of all, on the impact of cohesion policy on the Polish economy. We're just discussing how to increase the absorptive capacity, or maybe we just to give some recommendations for our colleagues. And finally, we were just discussing the issue of the role of the cohesion policy. However, it responds to some challenges which appeared and which could appear in the future. Just to sum up, Poland has been using European funds in the pre-accession period and also after joining the EU. As we mentioned, the country received a success to structural funds and the cohesion fund. And assessing the effectiveness of this policy, as it was mentioned during the first round of discussion, which just underlined the direct impact on the interventions made in various areas, namely also on the labor market, on companies, on competitiveness, on infrastructure as well. However, there are just effects which have also emerged in other dimensions related to the development potential, inefficient absorption of the financial resources, and the creation of a modern development policy. And we mentioned during the second round of discussion that we must enhance the institutional capacity and also place an accent on informing of our enterprises of the financial resources which can be used. And it was also underlined that in fact the cohesion policy respond to some challenges which inevitably appear, namely to respond to competitiveness, because in Poland this funds also support the smart specialization, the innovativeness, also social innovations, and also help to transform the Polish regions. And finally, as Dr. Nazarczuk said, these financial resources are quite effective in overcoming the negative effects of pandemic in Poland. Just to sum up, we must close the seminar. So thank you for joining me today. And I appreciate your input and expertise in the cohesion policy in Poland. Some answers might be valuable, especially for the Balkan countries, which use EU funds. So thank you, dear experts, for being with me, for accepting the invitation. And the audience, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.